This incident occurred approximately 2 years ago, towards the end of my senior year in high school. It was early May and our graduation was scheduled for early June. With summer on our minds and our teachers lacking motivation, my friends and I followed the majority of our class and started skipping school. Our friend group consisted of a few minor characters, along with my boyfriend of 3 years, Kyle, my best friend since middle school, Sarah, myself, and a recent addition named Brad, who I must admit is a bit of a white knight. Kyle came from a Christian family, but not the kind that embodies true Christian values such as charity and kindness. Instead, they were homophobic, used slurs, and displayed hypocritical behaviour. They attended church every Wednesday and Friday, but I never joined them due to being agnostic, closeted bisexual, and feeling physically ill from their hypocrisy. They never really liked me because of this. Additionally, they had a sense of entitlement that only became apparent when they found themselves in trouble. Kyle was involved in organising the church's funding, which gave them a significant position within the church hierarchy. The church held influence over many authority figures in our district, even though it wasn't the central institution in our area. It was the kind of unofficial establishment that indirectly influenced politics. So whenever Kyle got pulled over or received a parking ticket, they would drop a few influential names and avoid any consequences. Kyle himself was decent. I had known him since elementary school and he was usually nice. Plus he was attractive. I know it sounds shallow, but it was high school. So I tolerated his often narcissistic and foolish behaviour. Others treated him like he was the best thing since sliced bread. However, it was his sister, Charlie, who redeemed the family. She was a year younger than Kyle and me, and she was the only genuine Christian in our group. But she also had a mischievous side that led to some fun adventures. You could always tell when she had a mischievous idea by the half smile that appeared on her face. We often hung out together and she was a joy to be around. We were very close and she would confide in me about things she couldn't share with her family. To me, she was a great friend, but to them, she was the perfect little Christian daughter. Sarah was a really good friend who helped me through the death of my mom. Well, I wasn't diagnosed with depression or any major condition, but losing my mom devastated me. Sarah and Kyle were always there for me, and Sarah was the one who encouraged me to ask Kyle out. I trusted her as much as any teenager could trust someone. Now back to the story. One fateful Tuesday, Kyle, Sarah, myself, and our mutual friends went downtown to grab some food, go skateboarding, and engage in typical annoying teenage activities. Growing bored with our current pursuits, I suggested to Kyle that we race on our skateboards to the end of the street. It was just past the lunch rush, so most people were either back in their offices or stuck in traffic. Kyle agreed, and after about 30 seconds in a loose flagstone, I ended up face planting on the sidewalk and fracturing my arm. I tried to brush it off, but everyone else insisted on taking me seriously, considering I was walking like a newborn deer and my arm was swelling. We ended up going to the emergency room, where they confirmed that I had indeed fractured my arm and also suffered a concussion. The concussion was the price I paid for my foolishness. In the grand scheme of accidents, it wasn't a major one. But given my sorry state, the doctors wanted me to stay for further tests, receive a brace for my arm, and ensure that I was healthy enough to resume my foolish activities. Fortunately, Kyle and Sarah offered to stay with me, since their parents didn't seem to care and we were already skipping school, so missing the following day wasn't a big issue. I ended up spending the night in the hospital, which was understaffed for years. So once your condition stabilised, they tended to keep you in limbo and went home next day with the usual concussion instructions. Essentially, I was to act like a vegetable for 10 days. Eager to regain my newfound freedom, I complied and spent about 7 days sleeping and eating. Only after the doctor cleared me did I pick up my phone, where I found an unexpected message. Braid obtained my number from Kyle and sent me a link to a private data storage account. It was one of those services where you can upload videos, pictures, etc., and secure them with a passcode for personal use only. Intrigued by this unexpected twist in my mundane life, I followed the link and discovered a massive collection of pictures. These pictures depicted Kyle and Sarah in compromising positions, accompanied by captions that were definitely not in line with their supposed devotion to the Lord. It ranged from individual explicit photos taken from Snapchat conversations to full-on explicit content. It looked like an amateur porn album, with the most recent content dated to that Tuesday evening. Brett explained that Kyle had a habit of uploading videos of him, and Sarah engaging in intimate activities for a select group of people to enjoy. Personally, I would have expected him to use a mainstream platform like Pornhub, but Kyle had always been a bit self-obsessed, so this level of narcissism didn't surprise me. Brad had recently been included in this circle and was disgusted by the whole situation. For context, in our 3 years of dating, Kyle and I had only gone as far as a BJ after a football game in January. He fed me lies about saving it for marriage while being intimate with my best friend. I was devastated. The two people I had trusted unconditionally had been betraying that trust behind my back, fully aware of their significance in my life. When we next hung out at Kyle's place, I confronted him about this. At first, he denied everything and called me paranoid. However, when I presented him with the evidence, he involved his parents. They started accusing me of photoshopping the explicit content and even threatened to report me for creating child pornography, Sarah, and Kyle had just turned 18 the previous September. I knew that involving the police would prove my innocence, but I didn't want Brad to get in trouble for possessing such content, as our city had been cracking down on these cases for years. So I decided to drop the matter and walked away. I thought we had broken up, but apparently his parents insisted that we stay together until after graduation to maintain appearances with their extended family. Deep down, they knew he was guilty, but their usual entitled behaviour took over. Not wanting to cause a scene, I reluctantly complied and found myself sinking back into negative mental spaces I had experienced before. The interesting thing about religious families is that they can have LGB children, just like non-religious families. Kyle managed to avoid this sickness, but Charlie didn't. Not even a week after our argument, I found myself at Kyle's house helping him maintain appearances. Since Kyle and I didn't interact much during these times, I turned to Charlie for companionship. Whenever Kyle and I had fights, I would confide in Charlie because of her calm demeanour and genuine concern. I would share things with her that I wouldn't even tell Sarah. This argument, being the biggest one in our relationship, was no exception. While we were hanging out in her room, I noticed that she seemed restless. Her usual bubbly personality was absent. As someone who didn't have a strong gaydar, I assumed she had found out about Kyle's infidelity. Well, yes and no. I asked her what was bothering her, and she confessed she had a secret to share. I wasn't really in the mood for drama or comforting, but because it was Charlie, I let her speak. To my surprise, she revealed that she had been in the closet for years. She had started realising her sexuality at around 14 or 15 years old. For a long time, she had been trying to get closer to me because I was the only person she felt truly comfortable with. Her family was extremely homophobic and they only approved of her church friends. She had been jealous of Kyle and our relationship. But since she thought I was straight and didn't want to cause any trouble, she resigned herself to her teenage heartache. However, when our relationship hit a rough patch due to Kyle's infidelity, she saw an opportunity to express her feelings. Under any other circumstances, I would have said no. We had known each other for over a decade, and I had been dating her brother for 3 years. It would have been morally wrong, and Charlie was practically like a sister to me at that point. But then, in the heat of the moment, fueled by anger and a desire for revenge, I made a regrettable decision. I won't go into details out of respect for her privacy, but after that encounter, we both experienced a sense of satisfaction. However, I felt terrible afterward. I knew what I'd done was wrong, but given my current emotional state, I didn't care about the consequences. I felt more sorry for Charlie. At the time, my feelings were twisted and painful, and I convinced myself that I didn't really have romantic feelings for her. I thought it would be a one-time thing with the only non-family member I still trusted. Charlie sensed my conflicted emotions and managed to talk me out of some dark thoughts as we got dressed and said our goodbyes. Surprisingly, we continued our relationship after that. For Charlie, it was a chance to be with her longtime crush, and for me, it provided an escape. We kept up the charade until the day of graduation, when both our families, along with their church group, gathered at their house for a grand dinner celebration and a commemorative slideshow. I had known about this event since the fall, but I hadn't given it much thought until the incident occurred. During our fling, Charlie had been pushing me to overcome my negative emotions and seek revenge. It turned out that her parents had been spreading rumours within their church group, claiming that I had cheated on Kyle. They were saying After the dinner, Kyle would break up with me in front of everyone, including my family. I didn't care much about myself, but I couldn't let my dad be publicly humiliated by these individuals who thought they were superior. My dad worked for the district rep's office, and the district rep himself had grown up in that church. It was part of his man of the people image. A few well-chosen words, and my dad's job would be in jeopardy. Kyle's parents clearly hadn't thought this through, or maybe they had, and I was giving them too much credit. Either way, this had become personal. So Charlie, being mischievous as usual, started plotting. She was well liked by the church group, which made it easy for her to secure the role of preparing the slideshow. In fact, she even delivered a speech expressing her excitement to finally give her brother and his friends the recognition they deserved. She then began gathering videos and photos from Kyle's Circle Jerk account. He hadn't changed the password. What a fool! As well as screenshots of their group chat conversations. He obtained these by borrowing his phone, pretending to make a call, and sending the screenshots to her own phone before deleting them from the message history. Charlie integrated all of this content into a slideshow. The slideshow was structured in a way that displayed pictures of the boys alongside their favourite Bible quotes on one slide, followed by screenshots of their conversations and other pictures they had listed as their favourites, concerted from after they turned 18, for obvious reasons on the next few slides. It took Charlie days to compile this slideshow, but she never once complained or asked for a break. She was on a mission, and besides being attractive in her own unique way, her actions were also changing my perspective on our relationship. The night arrived and we all gathered around the table, engaging in small talk and putting on fake smiles. Several families from the church gave me smug looks, as if to say, "You're going to get what you deserve." I brushed them off and stuck close to my family for most of the night. Charlie and I avoided each other to avoid arousing suspicion. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. Everyone was called into the backyard, where rows of chairs were set up in front of a large projector. Charlie put on her best innocent act and then started the soundtrack. The slides began to play and people started gasping and shouting along to Good Old Days by Macklemore. The expressions on Kyle and his family's faces as they realised what was happening were priceless. One by one, each boy was brought on screen and exposed, and each time everyone was too stunned to intervene. The few who tried to grab Charlie's laptop were unsuccessful. She quickly picked it up and ran into the house, locking herself in a bathroom since the projector was wireless. No one thought to turn off the projector. What idiots. Finally, after almost 5 minutes of Bible quotes and explicit content, the main boy was displayed on the screen. His quote was Hebrews 13:4, which read, "Give honour to marriage and remain faithful to one another in marriage. God will surely judge people who are immoral and those who commit adultery." This quote was intended to set the stage for my humiliation. Oh, how the tables had turned. Several videos played showcasing his adult exploits, along with screenshots of the extensive content he had created, including text dating back to the summer of 2017, implying the duration of his affair. It was painful to watch, but I found solace in the sweet taste of revenge before my eyes. Finally, the last slide appeared, a blank white page with a single audio file link. Even I was puzzled at this point, as audio was not part of our plan. Charlie sneaked back outside, clicked play, and Kyle's parents' voices came blasting through the speakers. Apparently, Charlie had recorded their entire plan to humiliate me in detail and added it to the slideshow as evidence of my impending setup. She had covered all the bases, and when the show ended, she stood next to the projector, wearing a devilish half-grin. It took a few seconds for anything to happen. Kyle and his family hurriedly retreated to the house, but since the party was at their place, they had nowhere to go. Several church members expressed their disgust towards Charlie, Kyle, and the boys equally for what had transpired. Charlie ignored them, called out to her parents, and waited for them to appear. When they did, she planted a big kiss on my cheek and declared herself as gay. Needless to say, this did not go over well. My parents and I left in a hurry, and Charlie, now in deep trouble, came with us. Charlie and I have been in a relationship since then. As you may have guessed, her family disowned her, so she ended up staying at my place. My stepmom wasn't thrilled with how Charlie sought revenge, but my dad found it hilarious. He even won a bet with my stepmom had wagered on when I would come out and argued for Charlie to stay. After all, they had an interesting first meeting, and there was no risk of pregnancy. It was also a way for them to get back at Kyle's family, who had tarnished my reputation and tried to isolate me. My dad faced some jokes and snide remarks at work for a few weeks, but considering the circumstances and the fact that I was a teenage daughter apparently prone to rebelliousness, he got through it unscathed. No harm done. As for Kyle, his family was banned from their church when his collection came to light, causing them to lose their standing in the community. They also lost the favour of local officials, and their attempts to avoid fines and penalties through name-dropping caught up with them. The last I heard from Sarah, they had moved to the neighbouring state, and Kai was living a sexless life in his parents' basement, barely getting by at a community college. Sarah and I eventually reconciled. It took a lot of apologies, and some grovelling on her part, but I didn't want to hold on to resentment for the rest of my life, so I let her back in. We're not as close as we used to be, but trust is slowly being rebuilt. Hopefully, she can keep her impulses in check this time. Charlie and I lived together until I went off to college. Since then, we've been in a long-distance relationship. She managed to get into a school 2 hours away, so we often spend weekends at each other's dorms or somewhere in between, indulging in our usual pleasures. It took me some time to fully recover. As satisfying as our revenge felt, it didn't bring me true solace. Despite the implications of this story, I had a deep connection with Kyle, and while it may be dismissed as teenage drama, it left a lasting impact on me. My family and Charlie have helped me rebuild. Our relationship may have started unconventionally and could be seen as trashy, but we don't care. We're happy, and I have a girl who has gone above and beyond, for not everyone can say that.